Welcome back to the Marvelous Middle-Age Podcast. On this week's episode, I'm speaking with Candice Fraser. Candice is a wife of 18 years, a mother to two very active boys, and a licensed professional counselor with a private counseling practice in Texas. The focus of her practice is supporting clients through relationship struggles, managing emotions related to depression and anxiety, and finding their way as life transitions from season to season. Candice is also the host of the Couch Next Door podcast. Today, Candice and I talk about taking care of our mental health in midlife and the changes we might experience with our mental health in this stage of life. Candice also shares some simple tips on how to take care of yourself in this season. I hope you enjoy this episode of the Marvelous Middle Age Podcast with my friend, Candice Fraser. Candice Fraser, welcome to the Marvelous Middle Age Podcast. I'm so glad that you're here.
Me too. Thank you, Nicole. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I really appreciate you being here. We kind of met in a little bit of a different circumstance than what maybe two people would meet, which we'll get to here in a second. But I feel like we were really meant to connect, and what has happened from there is just so amazing to me in this world that we live in, that here two people that don't even live in the same state are now recording a podcast together. And I mean, what in the world, right? It's awesome.
I know.
I love it. Well, before we get started, would you just tell the listeners a little bit about who you are, what you do, a little about your family?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I live in Texas. I'm a licensed professional counselor in Texas. I am married to my husband. I think it's going on, 18 years in January. We'll be married for 18 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We have two boys, almost 13 and 8.
Yes.
And they're very active. And it's really funny. My voice is so shot from the weekend.
Yes.
Between the two of them, there were 9 soccer games.
Oh my goodness.
That we went to. And I'm kind of a yeller.
Well, you got to cheer them on.
I know. But I'm encouraging. I'm not yelling negative things.
No.
I'm yelling very encouraging things. Right. Still, they aren't crazy about the yelling, but that's my voice.
We're moms, and we have to cheer our kids on, right? I mean, goodness.
I just don't have a chill button on anywhere on me, so I just don't have the capability of being chill in any sort of way. And so I yelled a lot this weekend between all of the soccer games. So, but it's so much fun. I love it so much. I am just a glorified Uber driver, but
hey,
it's amazing. I love it so much.
Your life, I will say now that I have a driver, your life does change in a lot of ways, and in some really good ways in terms of them being able to drive themselves to activities. And it definitely has a nice impact on your freedom a little bit, your schedule a little bit. And then once both boys are driving, it'll be a game changer. So that's awesome.
Well, and that's what I said to my husband recently. I said, I never in a million years thought I would feel more into this idea of my kids driving. Cause initially I'm like, there's no way. That feels so terrifying. But then I'm like, heck yeah, I'm ready. We got 4 more years.
Come on, let's go. I know. I always said the driving when my son would start to drive it was going to do me in. That was it. I was going to be done. It was going to be more than I could handle. And don't get me wrong, it is still nerve-wracking for me. My husband, God bless him, did all of my son did a formal driver's education training and all of that, but my husband did all the practice driving. I've done very little because I'm the driver, I'm the mom passenger sitting there going, me too. Stop, fast, go up, no. Yes. And making him more nervous. So I'm just not helpful. And
I think I would be the same way. My husband, if we do it that way, he's going to have to be the one that teaches him. I'm also not a great driver. So I just don't think
then maybe you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I love that.
Exactly. So I know my role. I need to just stay out of that whole process.
Right. And now that my son's been driving for a little bit, I feel like I could ride with him now and be a little more subdued and not gasping and, grabbing for the door every minute and all of that. But it definitely does change in a lot of positive ways. And I was talking to someone the other day of just what happens then to your car insurance when you add a young man onto your car insurance. And
I know.
Sticker shock for sure. But you know what? It's so great to have a driver, a teen driver, especially if they are active, in school activities or sports or whatever. It's really, really nice. So something to look forward to.
That'll be a transition
for sure. It will. It will. Give yourself some grace and patience and just know that, they'll get really good and then you won't have to worry about them at all. Well, no, that's not true, but it's not as bad as what I think we build it up to be in our minds. So
I'll be calling you, Nicole.
Right. Please.
First time he's on his own.
Right. Pray for me. Just text me. Just say, pray for me.
Okay.
He's driving to school for the first time by himself. Please. Yeah. Because it is. I mean, it really is. We have that, one of those like Life 360 things with my son, especially now that he's driving. And I shouldn't admit, but admittedly, I still watch him sometimes when he drives, and we don't live far from where he works or school or anything, but I'll still get on there like, okay, he's at the street now. And there's a roundabout there. Okay. So he better be really careful, he's only driven those places hundreds of times now. So I need to chill. I need to chill out. Well, I mentioned a little bit earlier about how we met. And again, 10 years ago, we probably wouldn't have met because we wouldn't have been doing the things that we're doing. But we met through a podcasting course that we both signed up for through Ivy Media. Jamie Ivy, who has the Happy Hour with Jamie Ivy. I've listened to her for years. And I don't know about you, but we met through when that podcasting course was announced. I'd always had it in the back of my mind. I wanted to do a podcast, but not really seriously thought about it. When she announced that class, I bought it. I bought it and didn't even think like, am I actually going to do this?
I was the same way. Yeah. Like I hadn't even told anybody. And then I went to my husband and I said, Jamie Ivy's got this course and I feel like I'm supposed to buy that.
Yep. Same.
Like, okay.
Yes, I did the same thing. And it took me almost a year from the time that I bought it to actually do any of the modules. Yep. But when I did, I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I needed. It was very comprehensive. And sadly, I think she's discontinued the class. I don't think it's even available now, but it was really comprehensive. And I remember the day I posted then finally, because there was like a community you could post things in, and I posted my idea and I got some really great feedback. And you were one of the first people that very kindly commented on my idea and was like, oh my gosh, yes, I think this sounds great. And then you had started your podcast and we started connecting, and you kindly just invited me on your podcast. And it's been so fun just getting to know you. And
well, it was so interesting when you did post that, because it's almost like sometimes I feel, especially in my counseling practice, trends start happening that I start seeing in certain populations that I see with my clients. And when you posted that, I had I think that whole month been talking to clients I'd been seeing for 10 years probably, but now are in this midlife sort of stage.
Awesome.
And really trying to navigate that. So when you said that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what the world needs.
I love that.
Glad
I cannot tell you what that meant to me, because at the time I was like, well, I don't really know if anybody cares about this or would be impactful to people. And there are so many, great podcasts out there already, and so many great social media folks who are influencing in terms of midlife and things like that. And I thought, well, that imposter syndrome starts creeping in, and you think, oh, everybody's already said what needs to be said and all of that. But your comments and support just really meant the world to me. So thank you so much for doing that.
Well, and there are people that talk about it, but that again was a trend I was hearing from clients, is not enough people are talking about it. There's not enough information about that. And I think the more people talk about their own experiences, the more likely people are going to feel validated in their experiences, because it is so different for everybody else.
Right.
But as a whole, we're all going to be in midlife at some point, and we're going to deal with a lot of these transitions. And so the more people are talking about it, the more that's going to resonate.
Absolutely. I think there's so much power in sharing your story or in sharing our stories. And again, you have your podcast, The Couch Next Door. And I have to tell everybody, if you are not following The Couch Next Door, stop listening to this. Go follow The Couch Next Door right now. You will be so blessed by Candice and the guests that she has on. I do want to take a moment to acknowledge that, because I've listened to every episode, and The guests you've had on all have been fantastic. Even the episodes where I was like, I don't really know if I have anything, in common with this person's story, but I listen to it anyway. And I always take away something. I think you had a guest on talk about birth trauma, her birth story. And I thought, well, I don't have that. I don't have any of that. And I listened to her story. I'm like, oh, wow. There are a couple things that happened that, wow. And I really processed through that. And I was like, this is, and again, I thought, well, if that doesn't apply to me, it absolutely, every episode you've had, I pulled away, taken away something really valuable. So I would encourage anybody listening to go follow your podcast and listen, because your guests have been great. The most recent one about, I think it was Lisa, one of your recent episodes about entangling faith.
Oh, Donna.
Donna. Yes, Donna. Oh my gosh. That one, I have to admit, when I started listening, because I'm a believer, I'm a Christian, and I was like, okay, what's she going to talk about, And honestly, there were a few things where I was kind of like, but when you were introducing that episode, you said, just listen with an open heart, an open mind, and listen to her story and where she's coming from. And by the end, I was like, oh my gosh, yes. Like so much of what she was saying, it makes sense. And what she's grappling with and what she's processing through. And I have someone in my life right now that's kind of going through that. And I actually recommended that she listen to that episode, because it's exactly kind of where she's at right now. And I think there's a lot of people that are probably in that boat right now with their faith and, maybe some past church hurt that they have or things. So again, you're doing a fantastic job. And I absolutely love it. And I'm on there too. So there's an episode.
And Nicole's on episode 3, season 2. It was such a good episode. And I've got so many wonderful things that people told me listening to your episode and how articulate you were about the topic of middle age.
Wonderful.
And just thinking about like what you were just saying, part of the reason I created the Couch Next Door was because I would have sessions with clients and think, gosh, there's 5 other clients I wish could have sat in on that and heard this story or heard this experience or heard what's helping this particular person. And ethically, I can't do that.
Right. So-and-so was just here and they talked about this. Yeah. No,
exactly.
Nope.
So I was like, how could I provide a resource, not just for my clients, but for other people, because I also have friends that tell me similar things that I hear in the therapy room. And so, I call it a happy hour meets a therapy session. So, I want it to be relatable. I want it to be a place where we can talk about mental health issues, where people don't feel alone and they feel supported and they feel like, oh, there's a little bit of their story or somebody that they know and their story they hear in each episode. So thank you.
Absolutely. And you're doing a great job of that, because that's exactly what it is. It makes you not feel so alone. And I think, like I said, sharing stories, if one person even listens to an episode or a story and says, oh, wow, I'm not alone. I can get through X, Y, and Z, whatever I'm dealing with, or I can go seek out resources to support my mental health. That's worth it.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, so again, we kind of met in different circumstances, but I love how we met. And I'm so thankful that we met, because it's been great. And also just seeing your journey as a new podcaster too has just inspired me. Like, I know, I can do this when I'm having doubts about the, technology or whatever it is. Like, I can do this. It's not
you can.
unattainable. Right. So yay, we're doing it. We're doing it. So you are a licensed therapist and you meet with a variety of clients, different ages, different backgrounds. You mentioned recently, it seems like there are more people in midlife coming to you that are having concerns or things. What kind of trends? You mentioned some trends or common issues, concerns that your clients are bringing to you, specifically kind of midlife related, if you will.
Yeah, one, and we talked a little bit about this in the episode that you were on my show, but a lot of people in that caregiving role for aging parents, that is a big thing that I'm seeing, and just the struggles of that. And I'm not there yet personally, but I've seen so many people that like I'm their therapist as they're entering into that stage, as they're in the middle of that stage, as that stage comes to a close, and they're not only grieving the loss of their parent, but they're also grieving the loss of that caregiving role. And it
Yes.
makes the grief so much more complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And just validating the tension between, gosh, I hate seeing my parent struggle and I'm
Mm-hmm.
ready for them to go, but oh my gosh, but that sounds terrible. Why do I want my
Mm-hmm.
parent to die? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's such a hard in between place to live in.
Yeah.
So a lot of that and just transitioning, so many transitions when you're in a caregiving role like
Yes.
that. Also thinking about women specifically
Mm-hmm.
in midlife, and and ones that I'm thinking of right now are ones that I've been seeing for years. Like they were probably in their mid 30s when we first started working together, and now they're in their mid 40s,
Mm-hmm.
and their symptoms are just different.
Mm-hmm.
But the difference is they know themselves so much more intimately and in a different way
Mm-hmm.
that they recognize this. I don't think this is mental health related. I think there's something else. Like
Right.
I have always had anxiety, but now my anxiety feels weird.
Mm-hmm.
Or I feel way more scattered. Like I can't focus. I can't find my keys ever. Like, I mean, things
Right.
like that, where the situations haven't changed that may have triggered these new symptoms, but they're
Mm-hmm.
experiencing something that feels so different.
Mm-hmm.
And so trying to grapple and sift through, what do I do? you
Right.
know, how do I figure this out? Because this feels so different and it feels so confusing
Right.
to them as well.
Right.
Another thing is just grieving the loss of what our body's doing now.
Mm-hmm.
I think our bodies change, and I also think that's something that we don't hear a lot of people talk about.
No.
Not only are they not operating the same, that we're used to maybe from our 20s and our 30s,
Mm-hmm.
but they look different, they feel different. We have a very different relationship with our bodies, I
Mm-hmm.
think, when we hit midlife. So a lot of that is just giving space to people, admitting those things, talking
Mm-hmm.
about those things, finding validation that all of that is very normal,
Yes.
and what they can do to take care of themselves in that, because I think that can be a game changer for people if they can find a way to take care of their emotional health, even in the midst of all of the changes that are happening with those things I mentioned.
Absolutely. It's interesting as I've been digging even more into midlife and
Mhm.
perimenopause and all of those things. They, we, when we're sick, we go to the doctor if we have a sore throat
Mhm.
or we break our
Yeah.
leg or we're having, some other kind of physical symptom. And I think it's happening slowly, but I think the conversation around our mental health, our emotional health is changing, but I think there's still a lot of work to be done to say, you know what, if you're having these
Mhm.
feelings that you're describing, whether it be
Mhm.
due to your caregiving situation, other life circumstances, your physical body, the brain fog, the
Yeah.
anxiety, all of those things, those need to be attended to. Just
Right.
like you would a broken leg, you
Exactly.
need to take yourself in and speak with a professional who can help you walk through these
Mhm.
things, process through, talk about it in a really safe way,
Yeah.
and figure out what tools and resources are available to me to
Mhm.
assist me. Is it some type of medication, whether it be
Right.
medication for anxiety or depression, or do I need to go to see an MD for some type
Mhm.
of hormone replacement therapy or
Right.
something to deal with those
Right.
symptoms? Like, what are my options?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's attending to yourself in a little bit
Mhm.
different way,
Yeah.
but such an important way, you
Yeah.
know?
And having a place to really just be curious, I
Hmm.
think, when I think of women specifically, when they've noticed a shift in their mental health symptoms, having a place to just ask those questions rather than somebody saying, "Well, we need to up your dose of your
Right,
psychotropic medication,"
right,
right? Because one of my clients went down that road and she was like, "I still feel the same," because it
hmm,
was a hormonal thing that needed to
right.
be addressed. It
Hmm.
wasn't her mental health. It was
Interesting.
hormonal. And so, and that's a big decision to up a medication, especially if
Hmm.
it's one that you've been on. And there really is nothing tangible that tells you that
Right,
you should have more anxiety, right? Like
right.
everything's the same. So a lot of times I find clients asking themselves, well, what's wrong with me? why am I more anxious now? And so just even being able to ask questions like that and having somebody to bounce different ideas off of and
Mhm.
be curious and figure out, okay, well, let's go get blood work updated, right?
Yep.
Like you haven't had blood work done in 5 years. Let's figure out what's going on there first
Right.
before we jump into a whole new sort of transition in that way.
Absolutely. And I think, when I was on your podcast, we talked a little bit about this too. I don't remember, when you're really young as a young girl, you get the talk about,
Hmm.
you know, puberty and all the
Yep.
things that
Yeah.
happen with that, periods and all
Right.
that fun stuff. I don't remember, and I don't think it's because she wouldn't have if I asked, but nobody sits down with you,
Mm.
in your 20s or 30s and says, now here's what perimenopause is. Here's what menopause. Here's what
Yeah.
all of this is. Here's what's going to happen to you.
Hmm.
Here's to normalize it a little bit, right? Those are conversations you don't sit down and have with anyone. So when those
Right.
things start coming to
Hmm.
you, especially I think our generation,
Hmm.
you're like, oh, am I okay? Or is this something I need to be really concerned about? Or what in the
Right.
heck is this? And I think that conversation is starting to happen. I think there's more information out there for
Yeah.
people to learn, but it just wasn't something anybody ever prepped and primed us for. So,
Yeah.
like you said, instead of jumping to, I need to take more of my,
Hmm.
medication I'm taking for my anxiety and depression, maybe it's something
Yeah.
completely unrelated to that. And I need
Yeah.
other resources for that.
Mhm.
But nobody has really told us, how
Right.
that works. So,
Right. And there's so many things that happen in like the perimenopause, menopause stage
hmm
to us. And and you mentioned that episode with Donna, and we kind of talked about it because that was something that she talked a little bit
hmm
about in her episode. Like
yes, she did.
everybody experiences such different symptoms
Yep.
too. Like I was talking to some girlfriends recently, and I said, "Are you guys having hot flashes yet?" Because I feel like I've been having hot flashes since I was 35.
hmm
You know,
Yeah.
and they were like, "No, not yet." And I was like, "Okay, well, I'll let you know. You
Right.
know, when you have that, just come to me, and I will tell you that's
Yes.
the same."
Yes. For sure.
Oh,
Uh-huh. Yeah, it is. And everybody's different. And that's the other thing too, is that you feel like you are a little bit strange because, oh, so and so hasn't had this, but I have, and
yeah,
this started for me at this age versus
yeah,
this age. And, and there's just not like this guide. There's not this handbook or this easy step by step kind of thing.
mhm,
And, I think we talked about this too, where these changes aren't this is the ending of something,
mhm,
instead
yeah,
of
for
the
sure,
beginning, right? And
right,
it's a different, like you said, there's a lot of transitions in midlife. And this is one that, it's not about something starting in terms of, well, I could start a
mhm,
family or, it's my
yeah,
first child or whatever. This is the end of
mhm,
that cycle chapter of your life. And there's all these things that are happening that are
mhm,
sometimes not very pleasant.
right,
And, who wants to go out there and broadcast, oh, I had a really bad hot flash today and
I
I'm
know,
sweating
I
night
know,
sweats and
yes,
I'm, brain fog and this and that.
yeah,
And I mean, it's
mhm,
just not, you don't go out there announcing that you've, are doing this. So I think you can feel very isolated. You can feel very alone. And it's nice to have friends or people in your
yeah,
life that you can talk to, or a
mhm,
therapist or
yeah,
someone
for
or
sure,
a great,
mhm,
medical provider that you can talk to about these
mhm,
kind of things. But yeah, and
yeah,
like you said, it is very different for everyone. So it's not
yeah,
cookie cutter at all. You mentioned caregiving for
mhm,
aging parents, and that is something that, again, I don't think is talked about enough. Women
agreed, yeah,
typically do find themselves in the caregiving role,
yeah,
more often when it's aging parents, not all the time, but more often, or at least bearing more of the brunt of the load of that.
mhm,
And many of us are in a sandwich generation where we might still have our own children at home that we're raising, and then we have aging parents that we're helping to care for at different stages
yeah,
and levels of care. But yeah, caring for aging parents is so, like you said, it's very complex. It's a
mhm,
very nuanced,
mhm,
and it's something that, of course, we want to help our parents through that
mhm,
stage. But it is a lot. It can be a lot
yeah,
financially. It can be a lot
yeah,
of time. While many of us are still, in our career, if we work outside the home, we're still
yeah,
working in a busy full time, many times career. situation, and then you have aging parents on top of that.
Mhm.
It can be a lot.
So hard. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's so hard. And I think, overall being in midlife, there's just a lot of loss I think that happens,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something that I've started to sort of track with clients.
Mm-hmm.
Even before a parent leaves this earth,
Mm-hmm.
there's a process of grief that's happening in that caregiving role
Mm-hmm.
too. And
Mm-hmm.
I even thinking about clients who they have no intention of having children. They don't want any more children. Their
Right.
children are teenagers.
Right.
But even when their body starts to change, they have a hard time accepting I really can't have kids anymore. Not that
Mm-hmm.
I ever wanted them, but it's
Right.
like why do I feel this?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I feeling sad about this? And so I think some of that too is the encouragement to, people listening is just let yourself feel those things. Like
Mm-hmm.
all of those things make sense, even if they don't make sense. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I think if we
Absolutely.
try to make sense of our feelings, we'll get more frustrated. So just sitting in that and recognizing what you're feeling and validating those feelings,
Yes.
regardless of what they are, because you're experiencing them for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
They don't just, come out of nowhere. There's a reason that they're there, and we have to honor them and acknowledge them. And if you can find somebody to talk to that feels safe, do that
Mm-hmm.
because I guarantee they will, if they are a safe person for you, they will have something encouraging to say or validating to say. And that's
Mm-hmm.
all that we really need when we're hurting or
Mm-hmm.
when we feel confused or we feel burdened with emotion is we sometimes just need to release that and let somebody else in on that and help us carry that burden of those emotions.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I could not agree more. And I think sometimes people are afraid to confide, they don't want to burden someone else, or they don't
Mhm.
want to,
Yeah.
empty all their problems onto somebody. And it's not that at all. It's just look, when you are communicating with someone in that way, you can be validated and you can find community,
Yes.
and that's
Yeah.
so powerful. It's so
Mhm.
powerful. I used to teach in a prior life, I used to teach a class called Powerful Tools for Caregivers. And it was
Mhm.
a course for caregivers about how to thrive in
Yeah.
caregiving for an aging adult. And it would always shock people. So we would register, we could only, we had a capacity for the class, but it would always
Mhm.
fill up, and people would always be so surprised at how many other people were dealing
Mhm.
with the exact
Yeah.
same thing. They thought they were alone, and
Yeah.
hearing other people's challenges and struggles, they were so validated by that and so supported and encouraged
Mhm.
by that, that these were complete strangers coming into a room and, oh my gosh, you're going through the same thing with your mom
Yeah.
that I'm going through with my dad. And oh my gosh. And, it was just unreal what would
Oh, yeah.
happen, in those classes, all the, tools and things we were teaching them, but that community was so
And that's huge. Yeah.
important, to have
For
that.
sure.
So, I think, in these podcasts that we're doing, I think, and I don't want to speak for you, but I think for me, it's like kind of creating a community of people that can come and just, even though it's listening and virtual, it's like, oh yeah, there are other people out there that I can,
Yes.
relate to, and are
Mhm.
going through things I'm going through. So that's great. So if you were speaking to someone who's bringing you these
Mhm.
concerns and things, what recommendations do you give people for self-care,
Mhm.
taking care of their kind of basic needs,
Yeah.
and the role that that plays in our mental
Yeah.
health and our well-being?
Yeah. Well, first, I think we have to look at basic needs. And I categorize basic needs as our sleep, our nutrients, and hold on. Hold on, I'm
there's
getting overwhelmed.
there's so many basic
I
needs
know.
that we have.
Our sleep, our nutrients, and our environment. And so
Right.
what I mean by that is are you sleeping 8 hours? And I have clients who'll say, well, I only need 6. Nope, you need 8. Like
Mm-hmm.
you need 8 hours of sleep. And what is that like? Are you preparing your body for sleep? Are you getting that proper sleep that you need? Nutrients, not necessarily I'm eating, 8 vegetables and
Right.
fruits a day. It's
Yeah.
what are the foods that make your body feel strong? If you're
Mm-hmm.
eating McDonald's, does your body feel strong? I don't know, maybe, but
Right.
I mean, really asking yourself that
Yes.
question, when I eat this, how do I feel?
Mm-hmm.
Do I feel like I can conquer the day?
Right.
Your environment. your house does not have to be super clean, but does it feel life-giving? Are you able to go home and feel relaxed? Or is there a space in your home where you can
Mm.
go and feel relaxed? So
Mm-hmm.
really just tackling those things has to happen first,
Mm-hmm.
when we're talking about self-care, because if those things aren't being tended to, then these higher emotional needs feel so much harder to
Oh, for
tackle and
sure.
so much more overwhelming. And so, the other thing with our physical bodies, especially if I've worked with a client for a little bit and they're really engaged in therapy and they're really doing the work, but they're not really seeing a lot of return
Mm-hmm.
for that. It's okay. Well, when was the last time you went to the doctor? When was the last time you had blood work? And I
Mm.
know I mentioned that before, but that is something that I think is really important, that we're making sure there's not something physically wrong with us, because we could be a hamster on the wheel just trying all of these coping mechanisms that will absolutely never work if we are deficient in a physical sense. And so we've
Yes.
got to make sure that that's working. Our physical selves are working with our emotional selves,
Mm-hmm.
so that we don't feel like we're a hamster on a wheel, just
Yep.
running
Oh,
ourselves
yeah.
ragged. So, with all that said, taking care of those big things, taking care of those small things, that's going to help you to have energy to give space to these emotions, like I mentioned. That's
Mm-hmm.
one of the hardest things I ask clients to do, is sit in your feelings. Nobody wants to do that. That feels very uncomfortable.
Yes.
But we have to do that to know what we're feeling. So then we know what to do for ourselves and we know how to take care of ourselves if we can name what we're feeling. Are we going through grief? Are we
Mm-hmm.
feeling sad? What do we need when we feel sad? A lot of emotional regulation is anchored in our senses. And so what
Mm.
that may mean is, get your favorite blanket, get your
Mm.
favorite cup of hot tea, put on your favorite music, really tap into those senses to find some regulation when you're noticing that you're feeling some big emotions. But we have to kind of push pause on all the chaos going on around us
Mm-hmm.
so that we know what that is. And so we know what it is that I need. And thinking back to what you said too, Nicole, about just our physical selves and making sure we're taking care of that. Like, it's the same thing. If you had a cold, you're
Mm-hmm.
not going to still be doing carpool and still be, taking the brownies up to school or whatever, right? Like,
Right.
you have to take a day off. Your
Right.
body is done.
Right.
Same thing can be said for emotions, and we have to look at it the same way. If your body is sick, if you have the flu, you're staying in bed with your favorite blanket, your favorite cup of soup, and you're watching your favorite comfort show, right?
Right.
Same thing emotionally has to be done. We
Mm-hmm.
have to look at it in a very similar way, because it's hard,
Yeah.
when we're going through big emotions like that.
Absolutely. I love that. And I love how you kind of compared and contrasted, the physical health versus the mental and emotional health. And it's so true. I think when we're going through something really difficult, some transition, uh, that's we don't think about it in those terms at
Right.
all. We think about it, well, I'm just going to keep pushing through. I'm really
Yes.
grieving this over here,
Yeah. But
but I've got
I gotta do all the
yep,
stuff.
got a million
Mhm.
things to do and
Yep.
kids to handle or a job that
Yep.
needs me or whatever. We put that, and then I think the longer you
Mhm.
delay in attending to that, it can get worse and overwhelming. And
Yeah.
then by the time you maybe feel like you can deal with it, you feel kind of paralyzed. Like, what do I do?
Mhm.
I don't even know where to start. I'm in such a state. Or it started to affect your physical health or your job
Right.
performance or your parenting or your relationships or
Mhm.
friendships or whatever. And
For
so
sure.
you've ignored it. And that is great, I think. And I love that. And I love the focus on breaking it down too, because I think it can be overwhelming. Like, where do I even start? Like, if I'm
Right.
someone who's feeling all this, where do I even start?
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
sleep, right? Nutrition, environment.
Yeah.
How do
Yeah.
I attend to my sleep? How do I make
Mhm.
sure I'm getting enough sleep and good quality
Mhm.
sleep? How do I make sure I'm getting some good nutrition into my day, what I'm eating every
Mhm.
day? Um, and then my environment. Yeah,
Mhm.
I am definitely an environment person. When
Mhm.
my space is
Yeah.
cluttered or
Me too.
that,
Mhm.
something isn't right, it makes it really hard to focus on anything else. And so I
Yeah.
think for someone who's maybe sitting there going, okay, this is me start with
Yeah,
those three things. Just
exactly.
even write
Yeah.
them down and say, okay, what are some things I can do?
Mhm.
Do I need help in some of these areas?
Yeah.
I have a friend
Right.
who was really overwhelmed with her home, with the amount of stuff that she had.
Mhm.
And it was, you know, and she actually brought someone in to help her go through her things and organize her things.
Mhm.
And she said, I cannot even tell you it's the best money I've ever spent. Like, this has
Yeah.
changed the game for me. No, to make everything perfect, no, but it really helped that aspect of her life
Exactly.
change,
Exactly.
which is cool, to see that
Yeah. Mhm.
transformation. And then, like you said, go into, okay, so if those three things are pretty good,
Mhm.
then I can move into, okay, what am I feeling? Are there some physical things I need to go see a
Mhm.
doctor about or a
Yeah.
medical provider about? Or, is it in-person counseling and therapy? Would
Mhm.
that be really helpful? Which I think everybody should do
Mhm.
counseling and therapy. Even if you think you're on top of the world, I think it's great. I love it. I
Yeah.
go to counseling.
Yeah.
It's so helpful for me in so many
Mhm.
ways. I can't even, that'd be a whole nother podcast, but what are those tools and things
Right.
that I can lean into, or that I can do, things I can seek out to help me with all of that.
Yeah.
So,
And it can be a really tangible thing if you just think about your five senses. And I'm not
mhm,
saying I wouldn't expect anybody to sit down and tap into all of them at once,
mhm,
but just find one sense that can give you some comfort when you're feeling a lot of those emotions, when you've named those emotions, and when you maybe choose to carve out some time to sit in those emotions. Make
mhm,
sure you also have one of these tools to help regulate yourself
right,
when you're feeling those
right.
things.
It's wonder what putting on, like you said, our sense is like a comfy pair of
Yeah.
jammies and a cup of hot tea and a blanket, like
Mhm.
what it can do to just, even if it's 15 minutes where you just sit and
Mhm.
kind of let yourself feel and relax and breathe, you know.
Yeah.
And then if you feel, I mean, then there are so many things that can be helpful, but that to me is just a simple, easy,
Mhm.
straightforward way, right?
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
just let yourself feel and name, and
Absolutely.
name it and say, and giving yourself some grace. Like if I'm feeling grief because of
Mhm.
something, it's okay to
Mhm.
grieve that thing,
Mhm.
whatever
Yeah.
it is. It's not wrong. It's
Right.
and it's
Mhm.
good to name it, like you
Mhm.
said.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that so much.
Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
great. So I know you're kind of early in midlife.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And so I think we're like almost birthday twins, I think, or something, aren't we?
Oh, really? I don't know. When's your
In
birthday?
July.
So is mine. July
Hmm.
15th.
July 16th.
Oh, you're kidding.
Except I'm older than you by
Uh-huh. Well,
a
I'm
bit.
1982, so I'm 41.
74 over here.
Okay. Okay.
I love it
No
though.
wonder we're getting along. We're both Enneagram 2s.
I
We're
know.
our birthdays are right next to each other. Well, see, it was destined. We
See,
were going to find each other at some point,
I
Nicole.
know. It was just a matter of time. It was
Yeah,
just a matter of time. Thank you, Jamie Ivy, for
that's
your
right. Uh-huh.
podcasting course. That was the key. Well, and I bring up the fact that you're early in this stage
Mhm.
because I always like to ask my guests a couple of questions to
Yeah.
reflect for their own personal journey. We talk about midlife. So far, early
Mhm.
in,
Yeah.
what for you has been the best thing about this stage that you're
Mhm.
going? We've talked about some of the challenges about being in middle age, right? What is something that's been great about it for you so far?
I think just the way that I see myself in the world is so much less rigid when I think
Yes.
back to my 20s and 30s. I mentioned I'm an Enneagram 2, and I know,
Mm-hmm.
Nicole, you might identify with this, but I was getting so caught up with what other people thought about me and how I was in comparison to others operating in the world. And I just don't care about that stuff
No. Yeah.
as much as I did. And I think if I did, I probably wouldn't have started this podcast. I think
Right.
me being in the stage of life I am in gave me not only the confidence, but I also have a different level of time because of the stage my kids are in.
Yeah.
Um, and I just don't care as much about how other people see me because I
Mhm.
think I'm much more sure of myself in the
Yes.
world. And I'm able to honor that rather than feel guilty about that, which I think earlier in my life, I might have felt guilty about saying that.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
So I think that's the biggest thing that I've noticed for sure.
Right. And that's huge because that just affects so many areas of our lives, whether it's our relationships, career, things like this that we're doing, podcasting and other things, parenting. It's a game changer, honestly. Yeah. I love that. I love that. Yeah. So if you could go back to yourself in your 20s, Candice, who was maybe concerned about others' perspectives, maybe doing the comparison thing, what would you tell yourself about this stage of life? What would you say to Candice in her 20s?
You don't have anything figured out.
Yeah. And that's okay. Yeah.
And that's okay. But I think she thought that she did. She had her whole life figured out. It was all mapped out and it was all going to go that way.
Yeah.
And,
oh, yeah.
I think I had a very naive sense of confidence. Like I thought I knew everything and I thought I knew the world and I thought I knew what my role in the world was going to be.
Okay.
And so I think I would just tell her, you don't have to have it figured out because you don't have it figured out.
Right.
And you're going to learn a lot of things that are going to help you. And so you need to be flexible with that, with your expectations of what you want yourself to be.
Right. I love that because I think it's having that balance of confidence, but at the same time realizing that not only do you not have to have it figured out, you don't, and be open to the possibilities, of other things and other perspectives and other ways of getting to goals that you have. And when we're that young, we just don't think that way. It's just, and maybe that's a little bit of a protection, for ourselves. We're, but at the same time, I completely relate to everything that you're saying because I was the same. I thought I knew and didn't have a clue.
No.
Now that I'm looking back,
exactly,
which is the benefit of being the age we are. We can look back and say, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I'm good. I love it. Well, Candice, I just want to thank you so much for being on the podcast. This has been so much fun. And it's been great to just talk about this stage, things we can do to take care of ourselves, and just some really good practical steps that we can take as we go through midlife and all the transitions, as you mentioned, that we have. So thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Nicole. Oh, thank you. I'm so glad to be able to be a part of this journey with you. It's so fun.
I know. It's been great. So fun. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
At Deja Vu Rentals, we keep the rental process simple so you can focus time and energy on things that matter most, creating memories. Video recording technology continues to evolve at an exponential rate and can be just plain overwhelming. Let Deja Vu Rentals help you avoid purchasing a GoPro camera and all the accessories that may end up getting used once or twice. Let's be honest, we've all bought a camera that we just had to have, thinking we will use it all the time, just to have it end up collecting more dust than memories. Our GoPro packages are cost-effective and streamlined to give you what you need. Nothing more, nothing less. Only need one GoPro? No problem. 2 GoPros and a couple accessories? Cool. 4 GoPros plus all accessories? Done. The best part? You get to keep the SD cards. Deja Vu Rentals are the perfect addition to your wedding, family vacation, or corporate outing. Live, watch, repeat. Visit DejaVuRentals.com to learn more and rent your GoPros today. If you're enjoying the podcast, please follow the show to make sure the latest episode is on your podcast feed each week. I would greatly appreciate a rating and a 5-star review on the podcast platform you're listening on. It helps others to find the show. If there are topics you'd like to have discussed on the show, please email me at themarvelousmiddleagepodcast@gmail.com. The Marvelous Middle Age Podcast is produced by Riley Mullane and is part of the Ananellis Studios Network.